If you're trying to break 3 hours in the marathon, workouts like this can tell you a lot about whether you're actually ready or not. I've completed one of the most important workouts of this marathon block so far, a 30-kilometer long run with 3 marathon pace segments inside it. Today, instead of just telling you how the running is going, I want to do something a bit different and break it down, analyze a key workout in a bit more detail. We will look at the pacing, the heart rate data, and what this run actually says about my chances of breaking 3 hours in the marathon. Because one thing I really enjoy about running as a sports scientist is that you can actually learn a lot from the numbers and from the data. And since I'm already documenting this process, it felt like a good opportunity to dig a little bit deeper. Right now, I'm about halfway through my 12-week marathon block. The mileage is increasing, the long runs are getting longer, and the marathon pace segments inside those long runs are definitely getting more demanding. Earlier in the block, the long runs and the marathon pace segments were shorter, but now we're getting into the phase of training where workouts start resembling more the demands of the actual race. This particular session was 30 kilometers in total, with 3 blocks of 6 kilometers at marathon pace. So in total, that gave me 18 kilometers of marathon pace inside a long run, which is a pretty serious and marathon specific workout. The purpose of a session like this is to build your aerobic pace and to simulate the fatigue you feel late in a race while still practicing race pace. The run itself was structured like this. I started with about 7 kilometers easy as a warm-up. Then I ran 3 marathon pace blocks of 6 kilometers each, with 1 kilometer recovery in between. Finally, I finished with 3 easy kilometers as a cooldown. So in total, that's 18 kilometers at target marathon pace, which is a very marathon specific session. Breaking it up like this makes the workout slightly more manageable, both mentally and physiologically, while still producing a lot of marathon specific fatigue. By the time the final block starts, you already have more than 20 kilometers in the legs, which is where the session really starts to simulate race day demands. If we look at the pace graph, you can clearly see the 3 marathon pace segments inside the run. Again, the goal here wasn't to run the fastest possible splits, but to keep the effort controlled and consistent, trying to stay close to marathon pace. For a sub-3 marathon, the target pace is roughly 4:15 per kilometer. Looking at the splits from the run, most of my marathon pace kilometers landed between 4:12 and 4:18, which is actually pretty close to the target. What I care about more than the exact pace, though, is consistency. When we compare the 3 marathon pace blocks, the pacing stayed very controlled. The difference between the first and last block was only a few seconds per kilometer. In the marathon, big fluctuations in pace usually cost a lot of energy, so seeing that the splits stayed within just a few seconds of each other is a very good sign. The other interesting thing to look at is heart rate. During the marathon pace segments, my heart rate was mostly between 148 and 153 beats per minute. And if we look at the heart rate graph, you can see that it stays remarkably stable across all 3 blocks. That's important because one thing you often look for in workouts like this is cardiac drift, which is when your heart rate starts climbing even though pace stays the same. That's often a sign that the effort is becoming unsustainable and that your body is struggling to maintain the effort. In this run, the drift was actually quite small, which suggests that the pace was largely aerobic and sustainable. When we compare the 3 marathon pace blocks side by side, the effort stayed remarkably consistent. Okay, the pace slowed slightly in the final block, but heart rate only increased by about 1 beat per minute. That pace slowed down slightly in the final block compared to the first one is quite normal after already running 20 kilometers in total, 12 of them at marathon pace, and all of this being inside a high mileage week. But the key thing is that pace didn't collapse. It stayed very close to marathon pace all the way through the last block, which suggests that the effort was still manageable even under fatigue. And that's exactly how I felt. I was starting to suffer a bit and felt fatigued, but managed to bring it home without losing much pace. And that's actually a very good place to be, working close to the edge, but still under control. So the big question is, what does a workout like this actually tell us about race day? Well, it doesn't guarantee anything. A lot can still happen between now and the marathon, but sessions like this give us some clues. What it tells us is that marathon pace is right around the edge of my aerobic capacity. It means that the goal of breaking 3 hours is realistic, but it will still depend on execution on race day. Pacing, fueling, some resilience, and honestly, a little bit of luck will probably determine whether sub 3 happens or not. Personally, sessions like this are still a little bit intimidating before I start them. Long runs have been the part of marathon training that I've been the most anxious about, but every time one of these workouts goes well, it builds a little bit more confidence that I can handle the next one, and that hopefully by the time race day arrives and I can attempt it tapered and fresh, I will be prepared and the distance won't feel quite as scary anymore. In the next few weeks, the mileage will keep building and the long runs will get even tougher. And I'm scheduled to run a half marathon time trial, which will give even more insight to where my fitness actually is. It will also help me put together a race plan for the marathon itself. So if you're interested in seeing how this marathon prep continues and you want to follow along in real time, join the Elaborate Runners community on School. It's a community full of runners all around the world, breaking PRs, shattering limiting beliefs, having fun with running, and supporting each other along the way. Inside, you also get access to marathon plans for different levels, personalized training tools like heart rate zones and pace zones, and a race predictor for different distances. If any of that resonates with you, click the link in the description and join now. I look forward to seeing you on the inside.